Hello and welcome back to C# for Beginners video series. I hope you are enjoying the videos and getting some benefit. Please consider subscribing to the channel and also click on the bell icon so that you are notified when a new video is released. If you want me to go over a particular topic, please let me know in the comments and I will try to make a video on that. Let's get started with today's topic. It is methods and functions. And then we're going to talk about parameters and arguments, then variable context and method overloading. Today, we are going to create a calculator. So let's define a class calculator, public class, and then the name of the class. And then you have the open and close curly brackets. So here's our class calculator. We talked about classes in the last video, and we said classes are templates. So you build objects based on this template. Now let's add some methods to this calculator class. Methods are also known as functions. Methods and functions define an action that the object does. So let's add a function to perform addition operations. So here I have defined a method or a function named add. The way you define a function is first you specify the access modifier. We talked about access modifiers in our last video. We talked about public and private access modifiers. So now since we want this add function to be available to the caller or to whoever is making this calculator object, we have marked it public. Next, you define what the return value or the output of this function is going to be. The output can be nothing, or it can be some sort of data. So here we have defined that it is going to return integer data. Then comes the name of the method or function, and we have named it add. And in the parentheses, we have defined parameters. Parameters act as variables inside the function. You can add as many parameters as you want. You just have to separate them with a comma. And inside the body, we have defined what this function actually does. It adds x to y and returns the result. Okay, so we have a calculator class with a method add in it. So let's create an object calculator and call this method. So as we discussed in the last video, you use the new keyword to create an object from a class. So here we are creating a new calculator object and assigning it to our variable named myCalculator. So now when we do a myCalculator and then a dot, the IntelliSense is showing us what are the functions that are available to this object. And we can see that add, the function add is available. So we add that, and the IntelliSense is showing us that it takes in two parameters of type integer x and integer y, and then it returns an int value, an integer data type. So let's say we want to add 2 with 2, and we're going to put the result into a variable named result, and we will print out this result. Let's run it, and the result is 4. And I can call this method as many times as I want. I can recall this method with the 4 and 4 and print out the new result and run it. Now the result is 8. So you can see, like, every time I'm calling this method, I have to print it out writing so many characters like console.writeLine and then a message. I can actually reduce how many characters I have to type just by converting this into a method. So let's add a new method to print the result. So here I've added a new method or a function, name print. It takes in a message parameter, which is of type string, and it returns nothing. So that's why I have the keyword void there. So now, every time I need to print it, I don't need to type in so many. I can just print. So instead of doing console.writeLine, I'm just calling it myCalculator.print. Result is, and this result. Let's run it. And you can see it's printing out 4. I can also call the add method directly inside this print method. So I'm calling in this method inside this method call. So I am actually passing the argument result is, adding the output of the add function to the result is, and passing it that whole string as an argument to the print method. And if I run it, you will see I'll get a printout 4 and the result is 14. So the parameters are defined inside the parenthesis of a method declaration. So in the add method, x and y are parameters. And when we are calling this method, add method, and we're passing in values for these parameters, these values are called arguments. So here, 2 and 2 are arguments. In the print method, the message is a parameter, and when we are calling the print method, we're passing in this argument. So the value that you're passing in to this parameter is called an argument, and these are called parameters. When we are calling a method with arguments, the order of the arguments matters. In this example, we are calling the add method and we are passing in 2, 2. So this first 2 is going to be assigned to the x variable, and the second 2 is going to be assigned to the y variable. But we can also use named arguments. Example, so here I am using named arguments. So I am using this format, the name of the parameter, then a colon, and then the value. So I am assigning the value of 4 to the parameter named y and the value of 3 to the parameter named x. When I'm using named arguments, the order doesn't matter. And if I run this, my output should be 7. And the name result equals 7. We can also assign a default value to a parameter. In the add function, we can set a default value to a parameter. Let's say I want a default value to 5. And this is how you set a default value. In the parameter list, you just assign the value with the equal sign to the parameter. So this way, the default value of y is equal to 5. It means that when we call this function, it is optional to pass the value of y. So let's comment this section out and let's call the add method. So as you can see that now the add method is I'm only assigning the value of 2 to the x value, and I'm not sending any value of y to the add method. So since I'm not assigning an argument value for the parameter y, a default value will be used. And my answer should be 2 plus 5, which is 7. So this should print out result is equal to 7. And here we go. You could pass in the value of y at something else, 3. So in this case, since we are passing in the value of y, so the y value will be 3. The value of 5 will only be assigned if you did not provide a value for the y parameter. So in this case, my result should be 5 and 5. Since we've added a default value to the y parameter, we essentially made it an optional parameter. Because if we wanted to, we could not provide the value of y. So y is an optional parameter. But x is a required parameter. You have to pass in the value for x. So if I omitted this and added x afterwards, this will generate an error. And the error saying optional parameter must appear after all the required parameters. So this is to note if we are going to use a default value for a parameter, which will make it an optional parameter, all our optional parameter must come after the required parameters. As with any parameters, you can have more than one optional parameters. So I've modified the add and added another optional parameter, z, and the default value of that parameter is 0. And the add method adds x, y, and z and returns the result. In here, I can see I'm calling the method with 2 and 3. In this case, x is 2 and y is 3 and z is 0. So my result is still going to be 5. There you go. Now, I can use named arguments to assign values to the parameters. Named arguments are especially useful when you have multiple parameters with default values. For example, say you have a default value of y equals to 5 and a default value of z equals to 0. And I want to call the add method. I only want to assign a value to one of the optional parameters. So I can use named arguments. And the way I can do that is I can say x, name of the parameter, x, and then colon, and the value I want to assign to x. And then I can say z colon 3. So in here, I have assigned the value 2 to the x parameter. I'm assigned the value of 3 to the z parameter, but I'm not assigning any value to y because y has a default value of 5. So my result should be 10. X is 2, z is 3, and y is 5, so they all add up to be 10. And the result is 10. So this is how you used named arguments. You put the name of the parameter, then a colon, and then the value. And named arguments are useful when you have multiple parameters with default values. Now let's get rid of this z and the default value y plus y, and let's get rid of this. So we're doing 2 and 2, and it should return 4. Okay. Now we have a problem. Our add function only takes in integers. So this is a limitation because it only adds 2 integers and returns the result as an integer. What if we want to add decimals or doubles? This is where method overloading comes in. Method overloading means multiple methods with the same name have different parameters and return values. For example, we can overload this add method. So we'll just copy and paste the method. But instead of ints, we will add double and double and return type double. So this is called method overloading. Both these methods have the same name, add and add, but they take in different types of parameters and they return different data types. So this actually is an overloaded add method. I can also add another one. What if we want to add an integer to a double or a double to an integer? So basically, we can have two more overloaded, one with double x integer y, and the other one with integer x and double y. And they both return doubles. So this add method is overloaded 3 times. So this is an overloaded add. This is another overloaded add method, and this is another overloaded add method. So what this does is this gives us our calculator the power to calculate different combinations of x and y. So now I can say add 2 with 25.24, and it will add these two numbers, and it will give me 27.24. I can also change it to add 37.59. So in this case, both are double numbers, and it will give me an answer of 62.83. I can also make this one an integer, 23, and it gives me the answer. Method overloading means multiple methods with the same name but have different combinations of parameters and return types. Another important thing I wanted to talk today is variable context. Let's say I am defining a variable string name equals to John. In C#, these curly braces, open and close curly braces, defines context. If I declare a variable inside these two curly braces, that variable is going to be available inside these two curly braces. For example, this name is available here as well. I can print the name out here. And it will not have any problems. The name variable is available or is defined in between this and these two brackets. Now, if I define a variable inside this add method, This pi variable is only defined inside these two curly braces. This pi is not available or is not defined outside of these two curly braces. So I can't print the pi here. So it's going to give me an error. The name pi does not exist in the current context because the context is in between these two curly braces and pi is not defined inside these two curly braces. Pi is only defined inside these two curly braces. It also applies on ifs and else's. For example, if I say if true, I'm just going to put in true condition there. If I define a variable inside this, this variable age is only defined inside these two curly braces. It's not available outside here. And this should give me an error. The name age does not exist in the current context. Okay, so that's variable context. With that, we come to the end of today's video. I hope you are finding these videos useful. Please consider subscribing to the channel and hit the bell icon so that you are notified when a new video is released. If you want me to go over a specific topic in C#, please let me know in the video's comment section. I'll try to make a video on that topic. Hopefully, I will see you in the next video. Goodbye for now.